Hello, this is Eddie Barragon. I'm here to give a presentation on receptor tyrosine kinases and how it influences the development and spread and growth of certain types of cancers and how those malignancies can be formed in the first place. I also want to go over briefly that this presentation is really more of an example of a lecture or a good case of how I would go about presenting information to a class when I'm in my educator role down the line. What I would do in terms of not only transcribing the information and explaining the information, but how I would receive feedback and answer questions for my class, and kind of holistically take that all in with the material that I'm teaching. So this topic is really more of an example of that approach and how things would be done overall. So without further ado, join me on my presentation of receptor tyrosine kinases and the influences that it has on cancer and how I would go about that in a classroom setting. Thank you. So a little bit of a brief overview. Tyrosine kinase is an enzyme that has tremendous influence over the cell and even has the potential to cause the malignant growth of cancer when there are mutations and discrepancies that occur during the cell cycle. More specifically, from the research that I've done and the materials that I've read, this really occurs more during the translation stage of mitosis, where any discrepancy or mistranslation in the 3 to 5 strand length of DNA, that is usually what happens when the tyrosine kinase enzyme has some sort of error occur, and usually that will lead to a mutation, and almost always that mutation is not malignant and not detrimental to a person's health or to the population overall. On occasion, it can lead to the development of something that interferes with the cell's ability to perform apoptosis. And anybody with any sort of background knowledge would know that is the beginning stages of the development of cancer tissue and cancer growth and cancer development. And specifically, tyrosine kinases has a lot more to do with the influence of specific types of cancers. I'll get into that with a little bit more detail in just a moment. So, as explained, tyrosine kinase has the ability to cause deleterious and also detrimental changes in the sequencing of a genome, which can lead to the development of cancers. More specifically, when tyrosine kinase acts as an enzyme within for example, and I will demonstrate here somewhat within the cell membrane and even within the nucleus, there are certain transformations that occur that allow for the enzyme to have effects on certain proteins and certain intracellular objects within the matrix that can lead to the expression changes of a certain gene, and within certain genes that code for more specific types of tissues. I'm going to give the example of pancreatic cancer. That will lead to a cancer that is caused by the deleterious action of tyrosine kinase within a pancreatic cell's initial stage of translation. And I'll get into a little bit more detail of that later. But essentially what that is kind of the main occurrence of how tyrosine kinase is able to get in and interfere and influence the cell and cause these potential mutations. So And to step back a little bit from this, this would be a point in time where I would go to my class and I would give them more of a detailed example in the form of a video, or either that or a demonstration. Now, I wanted to just kind of go over the details of this instead of doing that in this circumstance, because it really doesn't fit the format of a video. I can't just pause and do an activity or a demonstration without changing the format of PowerPoint. But essentially, it's the main key points, right? Is I want to see students making the link between the demonstration and the consequence. So, going into the pathology of tyrosine kinase a little bit, I want to focus on a little bit more by example. So, tyrosine kinase is able to influence certain ligands in the body, EGF, IGF, VEGF, for example, leading to histone chromatin modification and or transcription factor activation. So the consequences for either of these, for let's say histone chromatin modification, can be lead to drug resistance or proliferation of cancer tissue, whereas transcription factor activation can lead to metastasization or the angiogenesis, or branching out of certain cancer tissues. So these are some of the ways in which cancers can be activated and transport themselves throughout the body, and the way they can influence the way that they can grow within the body. Tyrosine kinase has that ability. Again, these are all caused by very specific deleterious mutations that usually have no negative effect, but that possibility is always there. And that ability of tyrosine kinase is invaluable for researchers going forward and in the future, to use them as a critical biomarker for the information necessary to create, let's say, more therapeutic treatments, so that these changes can be tracked and controlled, maintained, even potentially reversed or stopped. And that's something I'll go into with greater detail in the next few slides. So that is the overall pathology and like how the different branching paths tyrosine kinase can take depending on what effect it has on the cell cycle and how the cells react in kind to that. Thank you. Now, just for a little bit more background information, I just kind of want to go into the different types of cancer that tyrosine kinase has an impact on and can cause, and what the consequences are for people who have these conditions. So, just listing down a series of examples, right? The implication that it has had in a variety of cancers. So a big type of cancer that tyrosine kinase has been linked to is ovarian cancer. Women are very disproportionately affected by, tyrosine kinase and this type of cancer because it is unique to them, of course, obviously. But the tragic thing is that a lot of women have that, susceptibility to ovarian cancer, and it's tougher to treat because it is so much more specific. It's tougher to track, and also the mutations are more difficult to point down because it is such a female XX chromosome kind of inherited thing. So ovarian cancer has a big impact on women and people who care about women overall, because of the activities that tyrosine kinase has and the impact that it's capable of having. So Another one I want to go into that I read quite a bit about that interested me was pancreatic cancer. Because pancreatic cancer, in contrast to ovarian cancer, is a little bit more universal, but also it's more specific. It has really detrimental and adverse health effects on the body. It causes a lot of tremendous pain, and it's very quick to metastasize, and it has a lot of negative uh, effects on a person's quality of life. So those are kind of the two big ones that I want to give a face to, that tyrosine kinase plays an active role in, just so people have a better understanding, or able to relate to it a bit more. And this is something that I would do to, in my classes, I would give, more specific examples of what these things look like and what the particular examples would have on a person, so that they can get a better idea for themselves of, what this looks like, and what they might be able to do in response to it. So I want to go over also the genetics of tyrosine kinase. Tyrosine kinase is a very unique enzyme in that the profiles that exist, there's over 90 different of them that have been identified and cataloged, and they are distributed and subdivided over a group of about 20 or so different subfamilies. Now, the reason I want to go over this is because that, just even one of these has tremendous effect on the body and the cell cycle. Whereas, imagine there's over 90 different of these, and all of them are having different effects and interacting with and encoding different parts of the human body during the cell cycle process. So just to have that and to be put into perspective, right? So tyrosine kinase isn't necessarily wholly unique in that aspect, but it is unique in that it is so well cataloged, and it is so all-encompassing and wide-ranging in the effects that it has. That's why I kind of want to break it down, because understanding the genetic link between these types of enzymes and the effects that they have is really kind of like your first line of defense, right? For both the classification and the categorizing of any kind of diseases or conditions. In this specific case, cancer that tyrosine kinases can have. So that's something that I'm going to stress about too when I become more of an educator in my field, in the field of biology, is the genetic component. It won't be super in depth, depending on the the learning levels and the area of expertise. But having a fairly decent understanding of how the genetics play a role, I think is important, because it's a more holistic view of things. Absolutely. So, just to touch on the future research aspect of it. So, with tyrosine kinase, it's a situation where researchers are focusing on using it more as a biomarker to be able to study it, and in terms of its presence and its influence overall, and how they can better track it in the case of malignancies, or the prevention of malignant cancers. Promise has been made in the development of various new therapeutic models. What I mean by that is there are chances where you can use tyrosine kinase as kind of like a good example, just conceptually, I guess, like a Judas Go kind of example, using it as a way to track the spread of cancer cells, to see if it can be, worked back, reverse engineered in a way, so that not only the source can be found, but also the mutation, with the combination of other advancements, such as CRISPR-Cas9, using these tools to edit out or cut out these malignant mutations, and eventually replace the cancerous tissue overall. This is way down the line. This is years, perhaps decades down the line. But it is promising, and even currently today, it's a whole lot better than it was a few decades ago in terms of cancer treatments and how you're able to use these enzymes and treating and tracking and dealing with certain things. So yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to touch upon with the future research aspect of it. It's a very important burgeoning and developing process with more and more research and more resources allocated towards it. Who's to say how quickly these developments can be given to the general public, or even what better methods can be reached in the future. So, final tips and takeaways. This is an interesting experiment in being able to represent information to a classroom and to have students be able to get something more out of this than just a simple lecture. I think it's difficult to really, and here's the thing, I'm not really entirely sure whether or not the physical classroom environment or the online learning environment is more suited towards my teaching style. It's definitely, online learning is better suited to my learning style. So using this subject as an example of tyrosine kinases and the impact that it has with cancers, and how oncology overall is how it plays a role in that. I just want to go over the key points of reminding students of what are your final takeaways. So with this in particular, I want them to understand that it has an effect on oncology. It has an effect on the pathology on a variety of different cancers. It has an effect on development of malignant tissues overall through genetic changes in translation and transcription and how that develops. And also, it's not entirely negative. It's a versatile enzyme, has a variety of diverse functions. It is a diverse array of type of different enzymes, 90 different classified tyrosine kinases, over 20 different subfamilies. I know a variety of other, aspects of the human cell that doesn't have that much diversity to it. They play a developmental role in cancer, and it's good to follow up and see how that is changing and how research is playing a role in reverse engineering and expanding knowledge and treatments of cancers. So, and that's what I want to do, is give students the base work for kind of a baseline form of knowledge for themselves, so that they can use that and proceed to grow and expand upon it on themselves as things go on in their careers. They'll be able to build on it, expand on it, maybe even correct it, depending on how research changes in the future. And so I hope you enjoyed my presentation and my example of a teaching presentation. So this was a twofold kind of process that I wanted to go over. So I hope I did a good job, and I hope this is a good example of what my future students will expect from me, and it'll only get better with more and more practice and time down the line. Thank you. This is the end of the presentation. I just want to do a quick follow-up and go over how I would tie things off and how I would, end the lecture and the presentation to my students. With that in mind, this would be like the excellent time to kind of stop and digest and really process everything. And I would initially go and ask my students, what kind of questions do you have? Be open to feedback from your students, right? That's something I believe in greatly. I think there's no better judge of the efficacy of an instructor than the person who's being instructed, right? You can be an excellent teacher, and perhaps you get a lot of good feedback from other professors and educators and instructors, but no one knows as well as the person that is receiving, um, is on the other end of the shoe or the other end of the stick of that instructing. So I I would be more than happy to answer any questions my student have at this point, or any concerns, any confusion, any kind of misconceptions or misjudgments about anything. So yeah, that would be the end of the presentation, and that's kind of the end of my teaching model and how I would present myself. So same thing as with my students, because I've never taught in a professional setting before. I've been a tutor, I've been a part-time instructor in terms of, like, I helped teach a class a few times here and there while I was in my tutoring sessions. But I've never been a professor yet, and I look forward to the day where I can take this information, take what I've learned, and apply it um, in terms of giving someone as best of an education as they can get. So thank you for joining me on this journey, and yeah, I appreciate any and all feedback and what needs to be done. I'm very, very new at this. It's not in my career wheelhouse just yet, but I look forward to it being a skill that I have acquired and developed greatly over time. Thank you. This has been Eddie Barragon.